All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have some huge news today. Talking about Dune Awakening private servers announced. Rentable private servers will be available from Head Start launch on June 5th. Now, this is some really crazy information. We didn't think we were going to get this until after the launch, but things have progressed apparently a little faster than expected. So we are excited about the fact that we are going to be able to buy private servers and still interact with the entire world system as a whole, which we didn't necessarily think we were going to be able to do. So let's talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you word for word. You can go ahead and check this out. It's on the Funcom website. It'll be posted in the link in the description. But let's talk a little bit about how this is going to work. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how much it might cost you. I've actually already checked out the prices up here for two of the primary services, right? We've got Nitrato and G Portal here. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that's going to cost you. We're going to talk a little bit about how it's going to be set up. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how I think we could maybe use these things for some interesting gameplay in Dune Awakening in the future. So let's take a little look here. So one of the most important things that Funcom did, and I think this was definitely the way to go, is they made sure that you were still going to have access to the shared spaces, right? The Deep Desert, Arrakis, and Harko Village. Now, this is really, really important because this is a huge part of the game, right? These three areas are a massive part of the game. And these areas outside of Haga Basin are also going to expand, right? We're going to get DLCs, we're going to get stuff like that. That is supposed to give us new spaces to explore. So if you were only ever going to be able to be in the Haga Basin with your private server, um, that was really just going to ultimately be a useless thing to have, but that's not the way it's going to work. So the way it's going to work now is you're going to go ahead and you're going to purchase your private Haga Basin right here. And that private Haga Basin is going to go into a world with a bunch of other private Haga Basins. Now, you are not going into the official network here. You are going into the private Haga Basins, right? So you're not going to be interacting with the official network at all. This is an unofficial network of servers and worlds that are going to be run by the server rental companies that you've grown familiar with if you've played Ark or Rust or any of those other games like that, right? Minecraft. All of these services offer these different servers. Now, they didn't make any mention of whether or not you were going to be able to host that server on your own on a local machine. I didn't see any information about that. Um, let's see. Yeah, so it doesn't look like we're necessarily going to be able to host these on our local machines. Maybe that's something we can get some clarity from the devs on, um, because that definitely seems like a pretty big issue. But the deal here is if you host this Haga base on your primary machine, who's going to be hosting the Deep Desert, the Harko Village, and Arrakis, right? So that really does make us very reliant on some of these third-party hosting sites for our private servers. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, especially once we get talking about the prices, but it is what it is. Um, we'll just have to go into this system knowing that that's probably not going to be a thing, and make our decisions based on that information. So, yeah, so what you're going to do is you're going to buy your own private Haga Basin. You're going to get teamed up with, I assume, up to 20 other Haga Basins. And then you're going to be able to go into these public spaces. The great thing here, though, is you can put a password on your Haga Basin. So even the people that are teamed up, right, that are in the other Haga Basins in your region, won't be able to join your Haga Basin without a password. So it's really going to free up your team, your guild, to be able to just have the run of this place, right? And to be able to, really control who goes in and out, so that when it's time for your lower tier, your PvE, right, gathering up those resources and stuff, you can do that without necessarily worrying about queues and different garbage like that. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do in your private server. Now, you're not going to get a full suite of mods, right? This isn't an open modding game like Rust or Ark or one of those other games like Minecraft where you can just have mods galore. And when you buy a private server, you load up a bunch of mods and you get a whole new gaming experience. Because you're going to be in a world with other Haga basins, and because those Haga basins don't necessarily have the same rule sets as you, the number of changes you can make to the rule sets is pretty minimal. One change that you can make to the rule set, which I think is freaking crazy, is you can disable security zones. You can totally disable security zones, making all parts of the Haga basin PvP enabled. Or you can choose to have pockets of PvP like on the official servers. So this is a little weird because when I think of a personal Haga basin, right, I'm thinking of putting my guild inside the Haga basin. So I'm not thinking of having PvP at all, right? I would like to just cut off the PvP, not make more of it. But when we start talking a little bit about what we might be able to do with these private servers in the future, maybe this will come into play. You've got taxation. You can disable taxation on your server. Now, this is a little bit of a crazy one, right? Not needing to pay taxes to maintain your base is pretty wild. I don't know. Um, this seems like one of those things that you would do if you were a really, really casual player and you joined a really, really casual cluster where maybe there wasn't really PvP going on in the deep desert at all. That's another thing I wonder. Will they have deep desert servers where the PvP is just totally turned off? Right? Could I join a PvE Nitrato cluster? That's some more information that we're going to need to get that I don't think we have yet. So very, very interesting. And then sandstorms, you can disable the sandstorms, making them not appear on your server. So if you're a more casual player and you want to play with some more casual people, right? These are some really good options for you. Being able to turn off the taxation and the sandstorms. This is not the Coriolis storms that destroy and remake the deep desert every week, right? This is the regular sandstorms that come through and do damage and stuff like that, that blow up your bicycle and all that other stuff while you're sitting around in the Haga Basin. So this is not those huge Coriolis storms. This is just the sandstorms in your Haga Basin that do damage and cause you to dehydrate and stuff like that. So being able to turn this stuff off, again, really, really good for casual players who maybe don't have a guild. So some interesting stuff there. You'll also be able to name your server, set a password for it. Please note that private servers do not have an admin control panel nor character transfers presently. We will evaluate this functionality post-launch. So I really, really hope that we do get the ability to have character transfers, right? Because there's so limited the amount of stuff that you can change in here. Going from one Haga Basin to another as your home Haga Basin is really not that big of a deal. So if you were playing in a cluster and, you know, there was like legit gameplay going on, people were really in guilds, people were really recruiting for guilds and stuff like that, then it would be really interesting to see people be able to go ahead and like transfer into other Haga Basins and stuff like that. As their home Haga Basin. Now, there is some interesting stuff here. Visiting other private servers. Just like how you can visit another server in your world when playing on official servers, you can do the same with private servers. Here's a kicker, though. When you arrive in an... all you need to do is select the other server in the server selection menu and put on the server's password when prompted. You can take with you everything on your character, and you are free to do anything you would like on the server. You can even claim land, something you can't do when visiting official servers. So this is really cool. So within the world, right, you've got your cluster of Haga Basins. You can visit any of those Haga Basins that either don't have passwords or that you have the password to. And then even if that is not your home Haga Basin, you were given the ability to set up a fief and claim land on that Haga Basin, basically turning it into your home Haga Basin. So this functionality is actually way better than the functionality that we have in the official servers. And the reason it can be like this is not necessarily every server is going to have a ton of players, right? I might personally buy a server, right? And maybe I only have 9 friends, so there's only 10 of us, but we go ahead and we buy a 32 slot server. And so now there's 22 other slots out there. So we're not really going to be hindered by other people claiming a fee for a sub fee for something like that on our server in our cluster. So maybe we just leave it open to that. So some really, really interesting stuff here. And I'm very, very excited about how this is working. Now let's take a look at what it's going to cost. G Portal, Nitrado, and X Realm are the ones that they've listed here. Now I've looked for the X Realm one. I didn't find any information on that, but I did look at Nitrado and G Portal, and I did just a little bit of work on here to set up a server. So these this is the custom order on G Portal. I just wanted to see what it would cost to get a full guild into a single server on G Portal for 30 days. And you're looking at just shy of $46 here. Now, here's the weird thing here is that we're going to be getting set up with other Haga basins here, but I'm not seeing any information about selecting a world that you might want to have your server on. So I don't know if it's going to set you up randomly or exactly how that's going to work. I would like to see the ability to pick a world. So I don't know, are we going to be getting only one deep desert and only one Arrakeen and Harkonnen or Harko village within each of these services? So is G Portal only going to run one instance of the deep desert, maybe per region? So if we pick, U.S. Washington, D.C., are we playing with everybody who's in U.S. Washington, D.C.? That would be kind of crazy. I think we're going to get a lot more than 20 Haga basins, although it could be that we get a bunch of Haga basins that are just 6 folks, right? If all you've got is a couple of friends you want to play with, and you want to go ahead and have your own personal Haga basin, right? For $11.50, 6 people, that's actually a pretty solid, especially considering you would have access to the entire Haga basin that way. So very, very interesting gameplay options there. But you're looking at just short of $46. Oh, yeah, just short of $46 or a little over $1 per person when you're looking at buying a 30-day G Portal server. Or if you go over here to Nitrado and you look at 32, you can actually go all the way to 34, 36 slots, or actually 36 cheaper than 32 over on the other. But if you set up with your 32 slots, oh, why am I suddenly so expensive? What happened? Our price is literally changing as I'm doing this. So we were sitting at just under $40. Now we're sitting at just under $48. I'm not entirely sure why the price has changed on me as I changed this slider. But for 30 days, so you're looking at about $45 to $50, it looks like, for a 32 slot server on these game services. They've got pre-orders going on now. I would hold off on this. I'm gonna come right out of the gate and I'm gonna say it. I would not do this right this moment. I wouldn't pre-order these. There are going to be some massive, massive issues with these servers being set up, right? A lot of these companies are pretty notorious for things just going like shit when the services first launch. So I would hold off. And I would maybe try and come up with some interesting ways to utilize some of this stuff. But there is some information that we need to know, right? I need to know, am I able to choose what world I'm going into, right? If there's more than one world, I need to be able to choose that world because I need to be able to cluster these Haga basins. And I need to have control over that clustering. So I don't know if I need to buy the server first or what. We're going to have to look into that. That is absolutely some information that we need to know because that has some implications for what I want to talk about, which is what these servers can be used for, which is tournaments. This sets up a really, really interesting system for short-term sort of seasonal play when it comes to Dune Awakening. And giving us the ability to get people in, maybe during their time off, maybe during specific times, and and have honestly some really long-term tournaments. I'm talking like maybe a whole month of tournament here. Um, maybe having a week where nobody goes into the deep desert, right? These would have to be gentlemen's rules, right? Um, you wouldn't be able to cut off the Haga Basins from the deep desert, but you could have a big, creator tournament or something like that, or, just a big tournament for players in general where you spin up a couple of these, right? You bring in a couple hundred folks, right? Maybe 150 on Harko's side, 150 on Atreides' side. And then you take a week where everybody, masses up to their levels. They get their ornithopters and stuff. They get prepared to go into the deep desert. And then you have a contest to see over the course of the next 3 weeks who can win the Lands Rad the most times, right? And you go all in on just trying to win the Lands Rad. And then after that month is over, you crown a winner. Bingo, bango, tournament completed. And that's just a really, really basic concept of what these tournaments could be. You could even have the tournament within the Haga Basin, right? Like the fastest to level 200 without entering the deep desert, fastest to ornithopter without entering the deep desert, just all kinds of different little things like that. So some really interesting implications for some tournaments, for some sort of secondary competitive aspects that uh, maybe we haven't had an opportunity to see yet and don't really have the opportunity to do inside of the official network. So I want to read the closing words here. We look forward to your feedback on private servers, and going forward, we will evaluate opportunities to expand their functionality and rule sets. Awesome. Enabling private servers for Dune Awakening has not been trivial considering our unique large-scale multiplayer setup, and it was important to us to retain the fundamental MMO-like gameplay that makes Dune Awakening so unique. I think that's perfect. I'm so glad they kept the shared areas. I think that was really important. That means it does come with some restrictions on how you can configure them compared to some other survival games, such as Conan Exiles. We hope that this service will still be meaningful to those who prefer to play on servers you do not have to share with others, and we hope that the shared world structure will add an extra dimension without taking away from the unique content and mechanics that makes Dune Awakening what it is. And hey, if you want a PvP free-for-all in Haga Basin without those pesky taxes and sandstorms, while also being able to invite select other people or even open up completely for strangers to come visit and claim land on your home turf, now you can. Whether you choose to play on official or private servers, see you on Arrakis soon, sleepers. So yeah, this is really interesting. I think the unofficial server network is going to be pretty cool. I will probably at some point for my community be going ahead and getting a private server after we see what some of this stuff is, and I start growing as a content creator. This is definitely something I want to do. And I definitely want to consider trying to get some tournaments or something like that going on in Dune Awakening. I think there's some really interesting concepts here for some really long-term stuff, and some really interesting gameplay. So we're gonna take a look. We're gonna see how this adapts and changes over the course of the next little while, and hopefully we can have ourselves a whole lot of fun. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and watching the video today. I look forward to seeing you out there in Arrakis. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you can think of anything cool to do with these private Haga Basin instances, let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say and what your brains are churning out already. So don't forget to put that down there.